Captain Jack Reed stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Force destroyer Resilient, his face hard as stone. Through the main view screen, he watched the blue glow of Neptune grow smaller as his ship retreated. Behind the planet, bright flashes lit up the darkness of space. Each flash meant another human ship was gone. "Captain, the Solarian warships have broken through the Neptune defense line," said Lieutenant Mike Green, his voice shaking. "All EDF ships in Sector 7 are. They're gone, sir." Reed's hands tightened on the railing. 6 months. That's all it had taken for the mighty Solarian Empire to push humanity back to the edge of their own solar system. 6 months of watching good ships and better people die fighting an enemy with technology far beyond their own. "Status report," Reed ordered, keeping his voice steady for the crew. "Not good, sir," said Green, looking down at his console. "The Dauntless and Protector are still fighting, but their shields are failing. The rest of the fleet is." He shook his head. Reed closed his eyes for a moment. The Neptune defense line had been their last real chance to stop the Solarian advance. With it broken, Earth lay exposed. "Message from Fleet Command, sir," called out Communications Officer Lisa Jones. "All remaining ships are ordered to fall back to Earth orbit. They're saying this is our final stand." Reed looked around the bridge. His crew was tired, faces marked by too many battles and too little sleep, but they were still ready to fight, still ready to die for Earth if needed. "Set course for Earth," he ordered. "Maximum speed." The war room inside Earth Defense Headquarters was silent as the holographic display showed the approaching Solarian fleet. President Anna Wilson stood with her hands clasped behind her back, her face showing none of the fear she felt inside. "How many ships do we have left?" she asked. Admiral Frank Johnson, Supreme Commander of Earth's military, looked up from his datapad. 47 combat-ready vessels, Madam President, against their 300. Someone whispered a curse. Wilson ignored it. "And our planetary defenses. Operating at 60% capacity, the orbital platforms took heavy damage in the last attack." Wilson nodded slowly. 6 months ago, humanity had been expanding peacefully through their solar system, establishing colonies on Mars and mining operations in the asteroid belt. Then the Solarian Empire had arrived with their massive ships and energy weapons that cut through Earth's best defenses like they were paper. "Admiral Tom Davis has requested to speak with you, Madam President," said an aide. "He says it's urgent." Wilson nodded, and Davis' face appeared on a nearby screen. His uniform was dirty, and a bandage covered one side of his face. "Madam President," he said, bowing his head slightly, "I need authorization to enact Protocol Omega." The room went silent. Protocol Omega was the last resort contingency plan, designed for a scenario they had hoped would never come. Wilson hesitated only briefly. "Authorization granted, Admiral. May God be with you." Davis nodded grimly. "And with all of us." The screen went dark. Wilson turned back to the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, we need to discuss terms of surrender." Reed stood on the bridge of the Resilient as they entered Earth orbit. The planet looked peaceful from space, blue and white and perfect. You couldn't see the cities damaged by Solarian strikes. You couldn't see the people living in fear. "Captain," said Jones, "incoming transmission from the Solarian flagship. It's Admiral Grant himself." Reed straightened his uniform. On screen, the image of a tall, silver-skinned being appeared. Admiral Grant of the Solarian Empire looked almost human, except for his metallic skin and eyes that glowed with an inner light. "Captain Reed," said Grant, his voice smooth and emotionless, "I have just finished discussing terms with your President Wilson. Earth has surrendered. You will power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded." Reed's face burned with anger and shame. "And if we refuse?" Grant's expression didn't change. "Then I will target major population centers on your planet. I believe I would start with the city you call London. There are 11 million humans there, correct?" Reed felt the eyes of his crew on him. He thought about fighting, about going down in a blaze of glory. But what would that accomplish except the deaths of millions of innocents? "We will comply," he said through gritted teeth. Grant nodded. "A wise decision. The Solarian Empire now claims this system and all its resources. Your people will be allowed to live under our guidance. Resistance will not be tolerated." The screen went dark. "Orders, sir?" asked Green quietly. Reed took a deep breath. "Power down weapons. Prepare to be boarded." 2 weeks later, Reed stood in a crowd of Earth military officers, watching as President Wilson signed the formal surrender document. The ceremony was being broadcast across Earth and throughout the Solarian Empire. Admiral Grant stood nearby, looking pleased in his cold, alien way. With this signing, Grant announced, the human race officially becomes part of the Solarian Empire. Your military forces are disbanded. Your ships now belong to us. You will find that life under Solarian rule can be comfortable so long as you obey. Reed noticed something strange. Admiral Davis was not present. None of the officers from the carrier Defiance were there. As if reading his thoughts, Grant spoke again. "We are aware that one of your vessels, the carrier Defiance, fled during the final battle. Let me assure you, this ship will be found and destroyed. Such futile gestures of defiance will not be tolerated." After the ceremony, Reed found himself alone with President Wilson for a brief moment. "Is it true," he whispered, "about the Defiance?" Wilson's eyes darted around before she leaned closer. "Protocol Omega is in effect," she whispered back. "Admiral Davis is doing exactly what he's supposed to do." Before Reed could ask more, Solarian guards approached, and Wilson was escorted away. That night, as Reed looked up at the stars from his apartment window, he thought about Protocol Omega. Most officers believed it was just a last-ditch evacuation plan, a way to save a handful of important people if Earth fell. But Reed had once heard rumors that it was something more, something that might give humanity a second chance, even if the worst happened. For the first time since the Neptune defense line fell, Reed felt a tiny spark of hope. Somewhere out there, beyond the reach of Solarian sensors, Admiral Davis and the Defiance were carrying that hope with them. 3 years passed under Solarian rule. Earth had changed. Tall, silver buildings now stood in major cities. Solarian ships filled the skies. Humans worked under the watchful eyes of their new masters. Jack Reed wiped sweat from his forehead as he tightened a bolt on the engine of a Solarian patrol ship. His old captain's uniform was gone, replaced by gray work clothes with a number stamped on the chest. 47,291. Just another human worker in the Mars shipyard. Finish up. 47,291. Inspection in 10 minutes, said a Solarian overseer, his metallic skin gleaming under the harsh lights. "Yes, sir," Reed replied, keeping his eyes down. He had learned that looking the Solarian in the eye could earn you a day without food. As soon as the overseer walked away, Reed quickly placed a tiny device inside the engine housing. It looked like a normal part, but it was actually a scanner that would record the ship's communication frequencies. Another small victory for the Resistance. Later that night, Reed entered his small living pod. These tiny rooms housed most workers at the shipyard. Once inside, he locked the door and moved his bed to reveal a small hole in the floor. From it, he pulled out an old-style radio. "Sparrow to Nest," he whispered into it. "Package delivered. Over." The radio crackled. "Nest to Sparrow. Good work. Any news on the big move?" "Over." Reed frowned. "They're speeding up the schedule. First transports leave in 2 weeks, not 4. Over." "Understood. Stay safe. Nest out." Reed hid the radio again and sat on his bed, thinking about the big move. The Solarians had announced they would relocate millions of humans to mining colonies on distant planets. Officially, it was called an opportunity. In reality, it was a death sentence of hard labor in terrible conditions. Time was running out. On Earth, Former President Anna Wilson sat in her office in the Human Governance Center. The Solarians had kept her as a figurehead, a puppet leader who signed their orders and told humans to obey. Most people thought she had given up, sold out to save herself. They were wrong. Wilson looked up as her Solarian assistant entered. "Governor Wilson, Admiral Grant wishes to see you." Wilson nodded and followed the assistant to a large meeting room. Admiral Grant stood by the window, looking out at what had once been Washington, D.C. "Governor Wilson," he said without turning, "the first relocation ships are ready. I want you to make a speech encouraging humans to embrace this new opportunity." Wilson kept her face blank. "Of course, Admiral. I've already prepared some remarks." "Good. The relocations are essential to the Empire. We need workers for the new mining operations." Grant finally turned to look at her. "There have been whispers of resistance. People saying they will fight the relocations. You will tell them such actions are futile." "I will make that very clear," Wilson said. After Grant left, Wilson returned to her office and pressed a hidden button under her desk. A small section of wall slid open. Inside the hidden space was a young woman with short brown hair. "Did you hear?" Wilson asked. The woman nodded. 2 weeks until the first ships leave. We need to move faster. Can you get a message to Davis?" "Yes. Our next cargo ship leaves tomorrow, with the usual supplies for the Solarian outpost on Europa. The message will be hidden inside." Wilson handed her a small data chip. "Tell him we can't wait any longer. Whatever he's planning, it needs to happen now." Far beyond the edges of the solar system, hidden in the dust clouds of a small, unnamed nebula, Admiral Tom Davis stood on the bridge of the carrier Defiance. But the ship no longer looked like a human vessel. Its hull had been rebuilt and expanded over the past 3 years. And it wasn't alone. Through the view screen, Davis could see dozens of ships of various sizes. Some were clearly built from pieces of old Earth vessels. Others were entirely new designs. All of them were being worked on by teams of engineers and technicians. "Admiral," said Commander Bill Taylor, approaching with a data pad. "Latest production numbers from the asteroid facilities. We've completed 15 more fighters and 2 cruisers this month." Davis nodded, taking the pad. "And the new weapon systems. The EMP cannons are installed on all major ships. The drone swarms are at 90% capacity." Taylor lowered his voice. "The gravity well generators are still giving us problems, but Dr. Miller thinks she's close to a breakthrough." Davis walked to a large holographic map showing the Solarian Empire. Red dots marked major military bases. Blue lines showed patrol routes, all information gathered piece by piece through the Resistance network. "And our people inside the system?" Davis asked. "Still in place. We just got a message from Earth. Wilson says the Solarians are starting their relocations in 2 weeks." Davis's face hardened. "Then we have 2 weeks to be ready." He turned to face Taylor. "Send the alert to all our hidden bases. It's time to bring the ships together." Back at the Mars shipyard, Reed was finishing his shift when alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. Solarian guards began running toward the landing pads. "What's happening?" Reed asked another worker. "Don't know," the man replied, "but they look scared." A moment later, a Solarian patrol ship landed urgently. Officers rushed out, shouting orders. Reed moved closer, pretending to clean a nearby engine part while listening. "Attacked 3 outposts in the Kuiper Belt," one officer was saying. "No survivors. No warning." "Impossible," said another. "Who would dare attack the Empire?" "Unknown ships. No identification signals. They hit hard and vanished." Reed felt his heart beat faster. Could it be? After 3 long years. That night, the Resistance radio network was buzzing with rumors. Reed listened intently. "Nest to all birds. Confirmation of strikes against Solarian outposts. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Protocol Omega is active." Reed closed his eyes, feeling a mix of hope and fear. Protocol Omega. the last resort plan that few knew about. Before the war, when Earth first detected signs of the approaching Solarian fleet, Admiral Davis had proposed a radical contingency plan. If Earth fell, they would need a way to fight back. Secret shipyards were built in distant asteroid belts. Key scientists and engineers were quietly given secondary assignments. Resources were hidden away. Even most of Earth's military hadn't known about it. It was too important to risk the information leaking. And now, those hidden resources were finally being used. Reed looked out his small window at the red Martian sky, where Solarian ships were scrambling in obvious confusion. They thought they won, he whispered to himself. They never even looked for our hidden fleet. His communicator beeped with an encrypted message. Get ready. Extraction in 48 hours. The resistance was about to become a revolution. Move now, Reed whispered urgently. He and 4 other resistance members ran across the dark landing pad. Above them, the red Martian sky was filled with stars and the occasional flash of a Solarian patrol ship. Their target sat 50 meters away, a small Solarian scout ship. Guards change in 3 minutes, said Jane Miller, a former Earth Defense Force pilot. We need to be inside by then. Reed nodded. The plan was simple but dangerous. Steal a Solarian ship and escape the solar system to find Admiral Davis and the hidden fleet. If they failed, they would face public execution. They'd reached the ship and Reed quickly placed his hand on the security panel. The device strapped to his wrist bypassed the Solarian security system, a gift from the Resistance's tech experts who had been studying Solarian technology for years. The door slid open. We're in. Move. The small team rushed inside the ship. Jane immediately went to the pilot's seat while Reed and the others secured the entry points. I need 2 minutes to override the startup sequence, Jane said, her fingers flying over the alien controls. Keep watch. Reed looked through a small viewport. On the other side of the landing pad, 2 Solarian guards were talking. They hadn't noticed anything yet. Hurry, he urged. Almost there. Got it, Jane said. The ship hummed to life. Just then, one of the guards looked their way. His eyes widened, and he reached for his weapon. They'd spotted us. Take off now, Reed shouted. The ship lurched upward as Jane fired the engines at full power. Alarm sirens began to blare across the shipyard. Hang on, Jane called as she pushed the engines beyond safe limits. The small scout ship shot upward through the Martian atmosphere. Patrol ships launching, said Mark, another team member, watching the sensors. 4 of them, coming fast. Reed strapped himself into the co-pilot's seat. Can we outrun them? Jane's face was tight with concentration. Not in atmosphere, but once we hit space, I can activate the jump drive. The ship shook as energy blasts from the patrol ships passed close by. One grazed their hull, making the lights flicker. Target the ship's engines, but do not destroy it, came a Solarian voice over the communication system. The humans must be captured alive. Not happening, Jane muttered. The ship broke through Mars' atmosphere into open space, charging jump drive. Need 30 seconds. A blast hit their rear section, sending sparks flying from a control panel. Hull breach in aft section, Mark reported. Sealing now. 10 seconds to jump, Jane said. Another hit rocked the ship. 5 seconds. Reed could see the Solarian ships closing in through the view screen. Jump now. The stars stretched into lines as the ship leaked into faster-than-light travel. The Solarian ships vanished behind them. For 2 weeks, they traveled in stolen ship, making short jumps between systems to avoid detection. Their destination was a set of coordinates Reed had memorized years ago during a secret briefing about Protocol Omega. Jump complete, Jane announced as they arrived in an unnamed star system far from Earth. This is the place, but I don't see anything. Reed looked at the empty space around them. According to his information, this should be the location of Sanctuary, the main base of the hidden fleet. Maybe we're too late, Mark suggested. Maybe they've already left. Reed shook his head. No, they're here. He opened a communication channel and transmitted a specific sequence of tones, the protocol Omega recognition signal. For a long minute, nothing happened. Then suddenly, their sensors lit up with warnings. "Multiple ships decloaking all around us," Jane exclaimed. Reed smiled as the space around them seemed to shimmer. Where there had been nothing, now dozens of ships appeared. Some he recognized as modified Earth vessels. Others were new designs he had never seen before. A communication request flashed on their console. Reed accepted it. Admiral Davis's face appeared on the screen. He looked older, with more gray in his hair and new lines on his face, but his eyes were still sharp and determined. "Captain Reed," he said with a small smile. "Took you long enough to join us." "Welcome to Sanctuary," Admiral Davis said as he led Reed and his team through a massive space station hidden inside a dense nebula cloud. Reed stared in amazement. The station was huge, with docking bays holding ships of all sizes. Thousands of people worked throughout the facility, building, repairing, and preparing for war. "How?" Reed asked. "How did you create all this in just 3 years?" Davis gestured around them. Protocol Omega wasn't just a plan. It was already in motion before the Solarians arrived. We had small outposts and manufacturing facilities hidden throughout neighboring star systems. When Earth fell, we activated everything and started building. They entered a large command center where a holographic map showed the entire Solarian Empire. "This is what we're up against," Davis said. "The Solarian Empire controls over 300 star systems. They have thousands of ships and millions of soldiers." Reed felt a moment of doubt. "And how many ships do we have?" Davis smiled grimly. 342 combat vessels, plus support ships. Not as many as them, but we have advantages they don't expect. He pointed to a different display showing unusual ship designs. "Our scientists have been studying Solarian technology. We've created weapons specifically designed to target their weaknesses. EMP weapons that can shut down their electronic systems, Chrome swarms that can overwhelm their defenses, and our newest creation, gravity well generators that can trap their ships and prevent them from jumping to light speed." Reed looked at the displayed weapons with growing hope. "The Solarians think humans are primitive," Davis continued. "They believe we're only good as slaves. They never bothered to hide their technology from us because they thought we couldn't understand it. That was their biggest mistake." He turned to face Reed directly. "The time has come to show them exactly what humans can do when pushed too far. I'm putting you in command of the destroyer Vengeance. It's one of our newest ships." Reed straightened his back. "What's the plan, Admiral?" "First, we start hitting their outposts and supply lines. Make them chase shadows. Then, when they're confused and spread thin, we strike at their main fleet." Davis's eyes hardened. "The Solarians thought they won 3 years ago. It's time to show them how wrong they were." 2 days later, Reed stood on the bridge of the Vengeance. The ship was smaller than traditional destroyers, but packed with new weapons and technology. His crew was a mix of original Earth Defense Force personnel and new recruits trained at Sanctuary. Through the view screen, Reed could see hundreds of ships gathering. The hidden fleet was coming together for the first time, preparing to launch their full-scale counterattack. "All systems ready, Captain," reported his first officer. Reed nodded, feeling the surge of determination. "The storm is gathering," he said quietly, "and the Solarians have no idea what's coming for them." "Enemy outpost in range, Captain," reported Jane Miller, now serving as weapons officer on the Vengeance. Reed nodded, studying the Solarian supply station on his display. The station orbited a small moon in a system far from Earth, but it was important. From here, the Solarians distributed resources to a dozen of their frontier worlds. "All ships, attack pattern Delta," Reed ordered. "Remember, hit hard and fast. We need to be gone before reinforcements arrive." This was the 5th raid his battle group had conducted in the past week, Admiral Davis had split the human fleet into small, fast-moving groups that struck Solarian targets across the Empire and disappeared before the enemy could respond. "Target locked," Jane said. "EMP missiles ready. Fire." The Vengeance shuddered slightly as it launched 4 missiles toward the Solarian station. The other 5 ships in Reed's group fired as well. The missiles streaked across space, their warheads designed to overload Solarian electronic systems without destroying the station itself. On the view screen, Reed watched the missiles hit. There was no explosion, just a pulse of blue energy that washed over the station. Immediately, the station's lights flickered and went out. "Direct hit," Jane reported. "Their systems are down." Reed turned to his communications officer. "Send the message." The officer nodded and transmitted a short video message to the station. In it, Admiral Davis stood in his uniform, speaking directly to the camera. "Attention, Solarian Empire. Your rule is coming to an end. Humanity will not remain enslaved. This is only the beginning." Message sent, Captain. "All ships, prepare to jump to the next target," Reed ordered. The small battle group vanished into light speed, leaving behind a disabled station and very confused Solarians. On the Solarian homeworld, Admiral Grant stood before the Imperial Council, his normally confident posture now stiff with tension. "Explain these attacks," demanded the Solarian Emperor, his silver skin gleaming in the council chamber's light. Grant bowed. "We believe it is a small group of human rebels, Your Majesty. They have attacked 27 outposts and supply stations in the past 2 weeks." "A small group?" the Emperor asked, his voice dangerously calm. "How has a small group managed to disable 27 Imperial facilities?" "They appear to have developed weapons that specifically target our systems," Grant admitted. "And they never stay to fight. They strike and vanish immediately." Another council member leaned forward. "And what of this human admiral who appears in their messages?" "Davis, I believe." Grant's face hardened. "Admiral Davis commanded the human carrier that escaped during the conquest of Earth. We believed his ship was destroyed or lost in deep space. It seems we were mistaken." The Emperor stood, towering over the council table. "Find these rebels. Crush them. Make an example of them that the entire galaxy will remember." Grant bowed again. "As you command, Your Majesty. I have already recalled our main battle fleet to secure the core systems." As Grant left the council chamber, he tried to hide his worry. These were not the actions of a desperate band of refugees. The attacks were too well coordinated, too effective. Something larger was happening, something he had missed. Back on Earth, former President Wilson sat in her office, reading reports of the attacks with carefully hidden satisfaction. The Solarians were growing nervous. Security had tightened everywhere. The time had come. Wilson pressed a hidden button under her desk, sending a prearranged signal to resistance cells across Earth and its colonies. Within hours, small acts of sabotage began. Power stations failed. Communication networks went down. Solarian patrols found their vehicles suddenly inoperable. Nothing big enough to trigger a massive response, but enough to stretch the Solarians thin, to make them look in all the wrong places. Reed stood in Admiral Davis's command center aboard Sanctuary Station. On the main screen, a map showed the position of the Solarian main battle fleet. "They're doing exactly what we hoped," Davis said. "Grant has pulled their fleet back to protect their core systems." Reed studied the map. "That leaves Earth vulnerable." Davis nodded. "And that's where we'll strike next." He gestured to the assembled ship captains. "The time for small raids is over. We're launching our main attack." He pointed to Jupiter on the map. "The Solarians have established their main Earth defense base on Callisto, Jupiter's outermost large moon. If we take it, we control access to Earth. This is where we reveal our full strength." The room filled with determined voices as Davis outlined the attack plan. When he finished, Reed approached him privately. "Admiral, permission to lead the Special Operation Team," Reed requested. Davis looked at him carefully. "That's the most dangerous part of the mission. You'll have to get inside the Solarian Command Center and disable their early warning network. I know their systems better than anyone, Reed said. I spent 3 years working on their ships. After a moment, Davis nodded. Very well, Captain. The Vengeance will take you in. 3 days later, Reed's ship approached Jupiter using a stolen Solarian identification code. Around him, the human fleet waited in hiding, using the newly developed cloaking technology reverse-engineered from Solarian systems. We're being hailed, reported his communications officer. Reed took a deep breath. Put them through. A Solarian face appeared on screen. Identify your vessel and purpose. Supply ship Radiant, delivering parts to Callisto Base, Reed replied, using the cover story they had prepared. There was a pause while the Solarian checked something. Your ship is not on our expected arrival list. Reed forced a casual tone. Check again. We were rerouted from Europa Station yesterday. Admiral Grant's orders. The mention of Grant's name worked. The Solarian looked flustered. One moment. Yes, I see the order now. Proceed to docking bay 4. The screen went dark, and Reed let out a breath. It worked. The Vengeance, disguised as a Solarian supply ship, continued toward Callisto. All Special Operation Team members, prepare for deployment, Reed ordered as he rose from his command chair. We have 30 minutes to get inside and disable their warning network. Jane looked up from her station. Good luck, Captain. Reed nodded. When the network goes down, that's Davis's signal to bring in the fleet. Let's hope the Solarians enjoy surprises. Reed and his team of 6 moved quietly through the Solarian base on Callisto. Their stolen uniforms and forged identification got them past most checkpoints, but time was running short. The main control room is ahead, whispered Mark, checking the stolen map. Heavy security. Reed peered around a corner. 2 Solarian guards stood at the entrance to the control room. We need a distraction, he said. As if in answer to his words, alarms suddenly blared throughout the base. Unauthorized chips detected in Sector 7, announced a voice over the station speakers. The guards at the control room door looked at each other, then hurried away toward the disturbance. That's our diversion team right on schedule, Reed said with a smile. Move now. They rushed to the control room door. Reed used his security bypass device to get them inside. The room was large, filled with Solarian officers monitoring screens showing space around Jupiter. Before anyone could react, Reed's team fired stun weapons, dropping the Solarians where they stood. Secure the door, Reed ordered as he moved to the main control panel. I need 2 minutes. He worked quickly, using the knowledge he had gained during his years working in the Solarian shipyard. His fingers flew over the alien controls, shutting down one system after another. Warning network disabled, he announced finally, sending the signal to Davis. On the screens around them, small dots began to appear as the human fleet decloaked. Dozens at first, then hundreds. A Solarian officer who was regaining consciousness looked at the screens in disbelief. Impossible, he whispered. Where did they come from? Reed smiled as he watched the human ships move into attack formation. We were here all along, he said. You just never bothered to look. The space around Jupiter erupted in battle. Hundreds of human ships faced off against the surprised Solarian defenders. Energy beams cut through the darkness of space. Explosions bloomed like silent, deadly flowers. Reed and his team fought their way back to the Vengeance, which waited at a maintenance dock. Alarms blared throughout the Callisto base as Solarians realized they were under a full-scale attack. Get us out of here, Reed ordered as he reached the bridge. Join the main attack force. The Vengeance broke away from the base, engines flaring. Through the view screen, Reed could see the massive battle unfolding. Human ships moved in perfect coordination, using tactics that confused the Solarians. Admiral Davis is hailing all ships, Jane reported from her station. Davis's face appeared on the screen. The surprise worked. Their early warning system is down, and they can't call for reinforcements. Now we press the advantage. All ships, execute Battle Plan Omega. The human fleet split into 3 groups. One continued to engage the Solarian ships near Callisto. Another moved to secure the other Jovian moons. The third, led by Admiral Davis in the Defiance, pushed toward Earth. Reed's ship joined Davis's group. As they moved away from Jupiter, Reed could see the new human weapons in action. Swarms of small, unmanned drones surrounded Solarian cruisers, overwhelming their defenses. EMP weapons shut down Solarian systems, leaving ships drifting and helpless. Most impressive were the gravity well generators. When activated, they created distortions in space that prevented Solarian ships from jumping to light speed, trapping them in normal space where they could be engaged. They never expected us to have this technology, Reed said, watching a Solarian battleship struggle against a gravity well. They thought we were too primitive. Their mistake, Jane replied with a grim smile. A massive explosion lit up space behind them as one of the main Solarian defense platforms fell. Captain called his communications officer. Incoming transmission from Earth. It's President Wilson. Wilson's face appeared on screen. She looked tired but determined. Captain Reed, the resistance has begun. We've taken control of major communication centers in Asia and North America. The Solarians are in chaos. We'll be there soon, Madam President, Reed promised. Hold on. Admiral Grant stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Imperial Might, as it orbited Earth. His silver face showed rare emotion, anger, and disbelief. How did they build such a fleet without our knowledge? He demanded of his officers. How did they develop these weapons? No one had answers. Reports flooded in from all over the solar system. Human ships attacking everywhere. Resistance fighters rising up on Earth and Mars. Solarian forces in disarray. Admiral, said his second-in-command, the main human fleet has broken through our Jupiter defenses. They will reach Earth within hours. Grant's eyes narrowed. Prepare all ships. We will meet them and crush them. And order orbital bombardment of major Earth cities. Show these humans the cost of rebellion. His officer hesitated. Sir, that would kill millions, including our own personnel. Do it, Grant shouted. I will not lose this system. In orbit around Earth, massive Solarian warships began to move into bombardment positions. On the ground, humans watched the sky in fear, seeing the ships through breaks in the clouds. Then new ships appeared, human ships, emerging from lightspeed jumps. The Defiance led the fleet, with the Vengeance and dozens of other warships following close behind. All ships, protect Earth, Admiral Davis ordered. Stop those bombardment vessels at all costs. The space around Earth became a battlefield. Human and Solarian ships clashed in the largest space battle humanity had ever seen. On the Vengeance, Reed watched as a Solarian ship targeted London. Target their main weapons, he ordered. Fire everything we have. The Vengeance unleashed a barrage of missiles and energy weapons. The Solarian ship's shields flickered, then failed. A follow-up shot disabled its weapons. All across Earth's orbit, similar scenes played out. Human ships fought with desperate courage, knowing everything was at stake. On the ground, President Wilson led a team of resistance fighters into the main Solarian control center in what had once been New York. After a brief firefight, they secured the facility. Cut off their communication with the fleet, Wilson ordered, and get me a channel to all Earth broadcasting systems. Minutes later, her face appeared on screens worldwide. People of Earth, this is President Wilson. Today we fight for our freedom. The hidden fleet has returned, and we are taking back our world. Rise up. The time is now. Across the planet, millions of humans answered the call. They overwhelmed Solarian positions through sheer numbers. The occupiers, cut off from orbital support and surrounded by hostile populations, began to surrender. In space, Admiral Grant's flagship, the Imperial Might, was the largest vessel in the battle. Its weapons tore through several human ships, threatening to turn the tide. We need to take out Grant's ship, Admiral Davis said over the fleet communication. It's the key to their command structure. Reed looked at his tactical display. The Vengeance is in position. We can make a run at it. Too risky, Davis replied. Their firepower will tear you apart. We have to try, Reed insisted. We'll use the gravity well generator to trap them, then hit them with everything we have. After a moment, Davis nodded. Do it. We'll provide covering fire. The Vengeance broke from the main formation, diving toward Grant's massive flagship. Solarian weapons fire streaked past them, some hitting and shaking the ship violently. Gravity well generator at full power, Jane reported. Ready on your mark. Activate, Reed ordered. Space distorted around the Solarian flagship. The massive ship suddenly slowed, caught in the artificial gravity well. They're trapped, Reed said. All weapons, fire. The Vengeance unleashed everything it had, joined by several other human ships. The Solarian flagship's shields began to fail under the assault. On the bridge of the Imperial Might, Admiral Grant watched in disbelief as his ship's systems failed one by one. Impossible, he whispered. They were primitives. How could they do this? An explosion rocked the ship, throwing him to the floor. Warning lights flashed everywhere. Admiral, called his second-in-command, we've lost engines and weapons. Life support is failing. Grant stood slowly, straightening his uniform. Prepare my shuttle. Reed watched as a small shuttle launched from the crippled Solarian flagship. It's Grant, he said, recognizing the shuttle's signature. He's running. Should we pursue? Jane asked. Reed considered for a moment, then shook his head. No, let him go. Let him tell the Solarians what happened here today. Around them, the battle was ending. With Grant's flagship disabled and Earth's surface largely in human hands, Solarian forces began to retreat or surrender. Admiral Davis's voice came over the fleet channel. All ships, stand down from combat operations. The Earth is secure. I repeat, Earth is secure. Cheers erupted across the bridge of the Vengeance. Reed looked out at his home planet, now free after 3 long years. 1 month later, Reed stood in the rebuilt United Nations building in New York. President Wilson addressed the delegates from Earth and its colonies. Today we offer peace to the Solarian Empire, she said, not as subjects, but as equals. The war has proven that humanity will not be conquered. We ask only for our independence and the right to determine our own future. The Solarian representative, not Grant but a lower-ranking diplomat, looked uncomfortable. The Empire is willing to discuss terms. Reed smiled slightly. The Solarians' carefully constructed image of invincibility had been shattered. Their defeated Earth had sent shockwaves through their empire. Already, reports indicated that other subjugated species were beginning to resist. As the meeting continued, Reed slipped outside to a balcony overlooking the city. Admiral Davis joined him there. Thinking about what's next? Davis asked. Reed nodded, looking up at the stars. There are other worlds out there under Solarian control. Other people who need help. Davis smiled. I was thinking the same thing. The Vengeance is being refitted. She'll be ready in a week, interested in a new mission. Reed extended his hand. Always, Admiral. As they shook hands, Reed knew that this was just the beginning. Humanity had faced extinction and survived. They had built a hidden fleet and won their freedom. Now they would help others do the same. The Empire thought it had won. They never saw the hidden fleet coming, and they would never make that mistake again.